I think Martin knew that he had to be a part of the North sooner or later.
One must understand that the civil rights legislation that we have had over the last few years, even the voting rights bill, which came the other day, didn't do too much to improve the lot of the thousands and millions of Negroes in teeming ghettos of the North.
I opposed SCLC moving north because we weren't finished in the South. We needed to continue political education, and we needed to work on building an economic base.
Martin could sit there for an hour, listen to us argue about, no, let's go here, let's go there, let's teach this, let's do whatever. But he would teach a lot by asking questions. A sudden quiet would come over the room because he wanted to make people think about what they wanted. Martin could be very quiet and have all the power in the room.
Martin had decided that we had to prove that nonviolence was relevant in the North, that we had to find a way to get into these northern cities before the riots occurred. And so we went north to Chicago.
I do not know that everything that Martin said or did, he was quite prepared for. He had felt that in many ways, dealing with the South was a more predictable outcome because in the North, the racial hypocrisy was very subverted. It gave the appearance of being not like the South. The South was the center of all evil, and the North was a place of a higher experience. And Dr. King said, no, that's not the case.
We moved into an apartment on 16th and Hamlin. It was a walk-up apartment with no lights, no heat. And it took quite an adjustment. I never got scared in the South. I knew the dangers. And I was prepared to get killed in the South. But I wasn't ready to, to have a junkie stick a knife in me in the middle of the night, coming into that apartment for maybe $15 or $20 that I had in my pocket.
That first night was a very cold night, and I got really worried that there weren't going to be enough blankets. So we went and got the blankets and went over to see Dr. King in his apartment. And as we were sitting there, the doorbell rang, and there was a young man there. The first thing he said when he came in the door was, "Are you really Martin Luther King?" They had a very lovely conversation with Dr. King really saying, "We want you to join the movement." And pretty soon later, there was another knock on the door, and there was like a whole train of them going down the stairs. And those young men came back a number of times to see Dr. King.
People in the community, they would just hang around waiting for him to come downstairs, so they could see him. But he would invite them in, sit down and talk to people. They didn't think he was the kind of person they could talk to. Then it made them feel, well, honestly, that they were worthwhile as well.
Martin understood that if you ran with folk, you could organize folk. Remember, we've spent all of our lives being hated in one form or the other. But when we see somebody who really cares for people, period, right? That person is worth knowing.
The first week we moved in, the temperature dropped to about 16 degrees below zero. And people came to us to complain that they had no heat. And to find babies wrapped in newspaper, we had to start firing the furnaces. So we got all the money we could, and we got enough coal to get all of the furnaces to work. We call the movement in Chicago the movement to end slums. And it plunged us into several issues. One was the area of poor housing. The other was the area of quality education and also unemployment.
I feel like we know more about our problem than Dr. King because we live here.
What would you suggest that he do, Reverend Mitchell?
I would suggest when they come down to our city, you should get the hell out of here.
So the first time we ran into stiff black resistance. We'd never met that in Montgomery, Birmingham, or Selma before. That was different.
A lot of the ministers were part of the patronage system. Mayor Daley's patronage system was one where people's jobs were handed out based on the number of votes that they could produce. They called it the Daley machine.
Martin had anxiety because, as he put it, we don't want to flunk. We don't want to fail in our projects.
We met regularly with Mayor Daley, and we disagreed because we were challenging the way Chicago was structured.
I think we're beginning to crystallize some of the problems and understand what we might do to begin to make some changes.
Does it mean demonstrations too, possibly?
Yes, it would mean demonstrations, but I think just when it would mean demonstrations, we wouldn't be able to say.
At the same time, we were still being pulled back to the South, and James Meredith decided to have a march in Mississippi.